Hello and welcome to All Stats Aren't We, a podcast in which Leeds fans cast their combined eye over goings on at Ellen Road, giving scrutiny to the underlying statistics and tactical footings at work at Leeds United. I'm Adam Elliott. 2 goals conceded inside 2 minutes of the podcast. An absolute gut punch of a start. And I'm joined today by the scoring 2 goals inside 2 minutes of the podcast. Just like this man. Wow, that was quick. It's Martin Riley. Martin, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Nice weekend. Haven't had to work this weekend. Leeds had a good game. So yeah, it's been all right. Can't complain. I've had a nice tea as well. Had some pulled pork homemade with some, I think the potatoes cooked in garlic butter with cheese on top. It was, really, really good. Really nice tea with some veg alongside it. And yeah, I really enjoyed that tea. How about you, mate? How's your weekend been?
Yeah, excellent, to be fair. So it's good to hear. Leeds getting 4 points out of 2 teams that I absolutely despise. I really don't like Liverpool. Why, I can understand why you don't like Chelsea, but why Liverpool? I don't like Liverpool. Just never liked them for years. One of my least favourite teams in English football. So that was good. And then on top of that, personal life's been going pretty well lately. Professional life seems to be improving. And I also had a really nice tea myself. I had a roast dinner. Me and my brother are in charge of Christmas dinner the next few years now because we've signed ourselves up for it. We did it for the first time last year, but we realised we need to practice. So we practiced with a roast dinner today, and it was really good. Not quite as full on as what the Christmas Day one will be, but a lot of the elements you're going to see at Christmas. So yeah, that was excellent. Roast chicken it was, but still really, really good. So I'm full of food. I'm full of wine. That's why I'm about 15 minutes delayed, because food took a while. Washing up took a lot longer than I thought it was going to as well. So that's why I'm a bit late, but we're here now. And we're going to discuss the 3-3 draw against Liverpool. Before we do, we must stress that we are now, less than 4 weeks away from the January transfer window opening, which is also pretty good. It means we've only got 3 fixtures between now and January, I believe, I'm right in saying, which is also great because it means that we can improve the team pretty quickly now, and we're on 15 points, which is a decent haul to be on. The first proper link came out today, which was a link that's an old link, Martin Batterina. I thought this was interesting to maybe talk about just very briefly, Martin, because there's going to be a lot of discussion about what we should be looking at going into January now, with the fact that we are not playing a single shape now. We're not playing one basic style in terms of the 4-3-3. It's now actually we might do a bit of 3-5-2. We might even see some 3-4-3 at some point. And so Batterina is an interesting one because I know a bit about him. He's a number 10 who can play as a number 8, has occasionally played wide, but he would probably be a number 10 in a 3-5-2, I imagine. Do you think that would be enough to sign someone like that? Or would you rather get someone who's maybe more, because he's kind of probably a bit more 8/10 rather than 10/wing? Would you rather get someone that's 10/wing personally?
Well, as long as they're a playmaker and fit that sort of mould and can maybe offer some goal scoring threat as well, it wouldn't bother me too much because it seemed like he could be relatively versatile as long as he's playing around those sort of areas where he can attack the sort of half space on the right hand side. I think that's where he prefers to operate from what I know of him. And I think that would be all right, but it's more telling for me that that is the type of profile that we are going for, which I think is probably more suited to us when we was in the 4-3-3. So maybe that is telling that maybe we could be leading more towards 4-3-3 going forward, which is kind of what I was expecting, but I don't want to step on the toes of the questions we've got later on. But yeah, it's an interesting link, one which has been linked to in the past, and I still think he's played too much at Como, has he? One start he's had, something like that. So I can understand why that has surfaced for a half-season long loan. That would be all it would be, I would imagine. Cause he's only just signed for Como this summer. So wouldn't be anything more permanent than that, I wouldn't have thought. Unless things have gone really badly for him over there and fallen out with the head coach, that kind of thing. But yeah.
Cesc Fabregas, that is, by the way.
Yes, I'm aware.
Also, one other thing to add with him, he is right-footed, but he is a set piece taker, so he would be taking Steph and long stuff off them. I think he'd be the best one we would have, from what I know. So that would be interesting. I wonder if we might do more than one thing now. I think you and I probably expecting us to just maybe make one signing, maybe two at a push. But now that the shape change thing has happened, maybe they'll go for something else. And it'll be interesting. I know there's some players in the squad that can play a few different roles. Who might be able to fit the 3-5-2 in a different way. I mentioned Jack Harrison as a left wing back potentially recently. That's something as well. But we might want to go for a more natural wing back. We might want to go for another centre back because we've got three. We might want to go for another midfielder because of the fact that we've had some issues there recently. I don't know. There could be quite a few things that might be in the fire. I don't know. We've got the funds to do so, or it might take a bit of clever and some loans and options to buy or whatever it might be. But yeah, interesting. And obviously Dan James being out for 8 weeks. I don't even think this was discussed on any podcast at any point, but that also makes me think about the January window and like, do they want a wide forward or winger type that can play another role? Maybe a winger that can play as a wing back or a winger that can play as a striker. You know, one of those two things, because that'll give them a bit more depth in those two positions. So yeah, all this needs to be considered. Maybe it's worth its own pod at some point. I don't know. We'll see. Christmas is a busy time, so I'm not sure. Anything else you want to add on that, or can I move on?
We can move on to the main.
Yeah, before I move on to the main bit, just a reminder, we are on YouTube. This episode will be on YouTube. I will make sure of it from Mr. Alfie. Hosty's away on holiday at the moment. He's our other YouTube editor, but I'll make sure Alfie gets on this when he can. Like and subscribe, please, and all that good stuff if you haven't already. Even if you don't want to watch us on YouTube and you prefer to listen, please subscribe with your YouTube account. Everyone has one. If you have an email, you have a YouTube account, just go subscribe. Even if you just subscribe to us, you don't even need to subscribe to the Square Ball. You can leave them. Just do us, you know? Anyway, we'll get into the game summary of the Liverpool game now, shall we? So, Leeds again approached the game in a 3-5-2 formation, with Liverpool opting for a 4-2-3-1. Throughout the first half, Liverpool had much of the ball, with Leeds happy to allow them possession. During the half, neither team were able to create much in terms of XG, with a total XG for both sides sitting at just 0.62, with Liverpool being just ahead with 0.35 of that. The second half, on the other hand, was all action, with 2 goals being scored by Liverpool inside the opening 5 minutes of the half, with the first coming from Hugo Ekitike, taking advantage of a poor pass from Joe Rodon and slotting the ball past Lucas Perry. The second goal coming thanks to another error trying to play out from Pascal Struijk and Gabby Goodmanson, which allowed Conor Bradley to whip the cross in, which was met by Ekitike again to make the score 2-0 in the 50th minute. But then in the 65th minute, Leeds made some substitutions and changed shape back to a 4-3-3, which changed the game for the Whites. They were able to get more territory through the box and around the box, and in which one such break into that box, Willianto was brought down by Ibrahima Konate, and a penalty was awarded, with big Dominic Calvert-Lewin putting it away to make the score 2-1. Leeds continued to apply pressure to the Liverpool back line, which again told in the 75th minute when Anton Stack blew the lid off Ellen Road after some lovely footwork scored to make the score 2-2. However, the Leeds fans' joy was cut short in the 80th minute, with Dominic Szoboszlai getting on the end of Ryan Gravenberch's through ball and scoring to make the score 3-2 to Liverpool. Leeds continued to attack, and just when Leeds fans started giving up hope, we won a corner, which was whipped in, going by all the big lads in the middle to fall into the path of little unmarked Altanaka at the far post, who scored to the roar again of the Ellen Road crowd to make the score 3-3 in the 96th minute. And the score ended this way, which with many Leeds fans left feeling crazy feelings in that ground. Roller coaster half, 6 goals in it, and probably a Premier League classic as well. It's lifted us to 15th as well, by the way, just after results all this weekend. Not that Wolves or Man United can affect anything on Monday. In terms of the stats of note, there were 6 goals. There was not 6 expected goals across the game. There's 1.51 for Leeds and 1.91 for Liverpool from a total of 28 shots. And Leeds had 2 big chances. Liverpool had 4. Those are the main ones to talk about. Right then, Martin. It was 0-0 at HT. WTF happened at FT. I don't really know. It was just mad. I wanted to talk about just how mental the game was first before we get into proper analysis of this. Obviously, not only is there some XG over performance here, and like I've looked at the post shot numbers on a lot of the players. You've got Tanaka's there on screen, 0.17 the chance, 0.83 the goal, the actual finish. Stacks was a really nice shot, I thought, because I think everyone was expecting him to go far post, like smash it if he had a bit more of an angle to work, but instead he just was like, nope, I'm gonna put this in the near post. Slightly awkward finish, but he made it work. And it again was like a shot that he increased the quality of from post shot XG. So yeah, this game was just mental in terms of the actual quality of the finishing, in terms of just the chaos of that second half. So WTF happened.
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy second half, because the first half was dull in comparison. Just not a whole lot happened. We were pretty solid, didn't allow Liverpool much space inside our box to get good shots away. Most of their efforts were coming really from set pieces and outside the box. So, and then it was pretty similar going the other way. We couldn't really create much either. So it was a very boring first half. And so then the second was just a total opposite. It's like two different teams came out in the second half. And I think the early error from Joe Rodon, which is quite uncharacteristic, I think really did help to lift the lid a bit and got things going from there. And then it just, for the rest of that half, it was pretty much non-stop, other than like a 10-minute spell after Liverpool scored their second and we made our subs. But yeah, it was an absolutely insane game. You're muted, mate.
Indeed, I am muted. That can stay in because that's funny. It was crazy, and I've watched so many different perspectives of this, different commentators from different fans in the ground watching it, Liverpool end as well, and yeah, it was just mental. And clearly a Premier League classic. It made its way to first on Match of the Day as well for a reason, but it was very different from the Chelsea game, Martin. And I think a lot of us envisaged Leeds trying to do things the same way, but they weren't quite able to do so, and they weren't as dominant, because even though we only had about 29% of the ball against Chelsea, we were clearly the more dominant team. We were on top. We had more of the chances and the ball when it was in their half. At least stuff was happening. Here, that wasn't so much the case. So why weren't we able to play this game the same way as that Chelsea fixture? Was it, for you, something that Liverpool were able to do in possession or out of possession? Was it just a mismatch in terms of some of the individual duels on the pitch, like you're talking about Van Dijk versus Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and perhaps even though Calvert-Lewin's excellent in the air, Van Dijk is arguably the best centre-back in the league in the air, or at least top sort of 4 or 5. Was it just that, or was there something more to it in terms of Liverpool's shape and structure?
I think that definitely did work against us, the fact that they've got Van Dijk, who's so amazing in the air. He's consistently been one of the guys who's in the top 5, even most of the time top 2 in the league, if not in the world. So it's natural that that's going to affect Calvert-Lewin's aerial game. He may be elite at that kind of thing, but there's also other players who are elite at it as well. So you're going to come into these roadblocks. And I do think that it's maybe the tactic maybe caught Chelsea a bit cold, and maybe they weren't expecting that. But because Liverpool had just seen us do that to Chelsea, they kind of knew what our game plan was going to be. It was going to be get the ball long to Calvert-Lewin. That is what we was doing from the get-go. Literally, as soon as we got the ball, it went back to Perry, and Perry launched it forward. That was one of the first actions in the game, and that theme continued throughout the first half and going to the second. And I think that was the main thing for me, was that Liverpool were more prepared for it. It was aware of where the second ball threat was going to come from, and we're generally managing those areas quite well. There were some moments where we did manage to do quite well and managed to get it into their third. Was one bit where I think it was Okafor and Calvert-Lewin combined quite nicely, and then Okafor got a snapshot off away at the end of the edge of the box, which was quite nice, but it was just a little bit wide. But largely, it was not as effective as against Chelsea, and I think Liverpool had their best centre-backs in for this one. Chelsea didn't. They had to make substitutions. They weren't at full strength. And I think largely Liverpool were at full strength. I think that also impacted things. So that is the main things I'd say as to why it was different. And I don't think there's anything major tactically that Liverpool were doing differently, but I think that the players were just ready for what was going to be coming at them more in this one.
Yeah, I spoke on the last pod and I said about the idea of directness and what that means, because I think a lot of people just assume you're hitting it to the big man and that's it. But it doesn't always have to look like that. It could be switches of play from wing back to wing back, or at least one of the outside centre backs to the opposite side to the wing back. It could be a ball over the top for a striker to run onto beyond the defensive line. It can be all manner of things. It doesn't have to be you're just going to Calvert-Lewin and that's it. I think that's the main way, of course, and I think that's where, if we can get bodies around him, that's where we can start to generate more attacks again against maybe lower quality opposition than Liverpool. But we weren't able to do that as often here. That's quite evident. But there were other things, I think, at play, probably more in the second half when Liverpool had a winning game state. Every time they were ahead, I think they were quite happy to sit off us a little bit and kind of bait us into passing more. Because there were times, there was a sequence at one point in the second half at 3-2 down, for example, where Strauch and Stack just played about 8 passes between them for about 30 seconds, and it was just like, we're going nowhere here. And then eventually we did actually manage to break into their kind of third, but it took a bit of time. But a lot of the time, that was kind of how it looked. Like there were a lot of passes between Strauch and Rodon in both halves. I know it improves, and we're going to talk about that later on, but there were a lot of those that were just not really going anywhere, a bit aimless, and then often we were going back to Perry and booting it long. But especially at 0-0 and so when Liverpool weren't winning, I do think there was a little bit of a difference. And Halifax Exile on Blue Skies mentioned this. He says Liverpool in the first half played 2 men high and wide to keep Bogle and Goodmanson pinned back and to give them an overload in the middle. Does this render the 3-5-2 useless going forwards? I don't think it does, but this is the point. Like, you just need other ways of being able to go direct. If your wing backs are marked out the game, or your striker is, then you need to find a player that you maybe go long to go over the top, and you can create space and chances from that. There is always, John will say this, like if a team is set up a certain way, their structure's a certain way, and they're pressing in a certain way, there is always going to be some space somewhere for your players to exploit. It is an 11-side pitch with 2 teams. There is always some space, unless they sit in a low block. But even then, you've then got, attack versus defense. It's a different kind of game. But I'm talking about in general play, there is always going to be an area of the pitch that you can play into to get forward, to get into the opposition's third. So I don't think it's useless. But the point as well is that you and I have done a lovely article today, you mainly, me a little bit, that went out talking about directions, talking about shape, and that piece detailed the fact that the 3-5-2 shape does not exactly mean direct football, nor does the 4-3-3 shape mean possession-based football, which is what our article said and is what was evident here, I think. So yeah, do you want to answer Halifax Exile's question? Or
yeah. So I don't think that was really happening too often. At least it wasn't impacting our ability to go long, because that wasn't the areas where we're looking for the second balls anyway. Because the area where we're looking for the second balls is from the free in midfield. So the wing backs being a little bit pinned back wouldn't have affected it too much. And I also don't think that was really happening. The wing backs were pretty high most of the time. The main players in build-up was the 3 centre-backs and Ampadu, which is something which I noted in the article that was talking about there, that was pretty much what the structure was when we are aiming to go long, was just the 3 centre-backs and one of the midfielders dropping deep, usually Ampadu, because he's the defensive midfielder. And I don't think the wing-backs were too pinned back in this one, personally, at least not from the rewatch. I didn't notice it myself. If I missed it, fair play, but it wasn't something which stuck out to me while I was on the rewatch. But it will be something to keep an eye on going forward if that does impact it. But I wouldn't have thought it would, at least if we are aiming to go long. It's midfielders who are going to be picking up those second balls, and it shouldn't make too much of a problem for us. I don't think. But we'll have to see if we do continue to go long in the first place, or even use the 3-5-2 in the coming games.
They also got one thing that Dan and I mentioned is Szoboszlai being Liverpool's pretty much their most important player at the moment, no matter where they play him. And at right back, he's a good player for build-up, and he's a good player out of possession. And then if he's in midfield, he's a good player for the out of possession. He's good for the second balls, and they put him in midfield to try and probably help a bit more in that regard. And then Gravenberch, who's been monstrous to Liverpool over the last 2 seasons. He's missed a few games this season, but was back here. And again, it made a difference just having those two in that area to help with second balls as well. So that's probably part of why as well, personnel-wise, they were probably a bit better, Liverpool, than they have been in some of their recent games. So I think that's some of it as well. But mine, at 2-0 down, obviously a lot of us had given up a little bit and lost a bit of hope, but we clearly did improve somehow. We managed to fight back. We managed to get a foothold in the game, not even just the goal, like before the goal with the penalty. It felt like we were suddenly back into the game. And obviously, game state might come into that. And obviously, Liverpool being 2-0 up, probably thinking after the run they've been on, there's something to protect here. Maybe we don't need to play as gung-ho. Maybe we can just give them the ball, especially their centre-backs, and hope that they just pass it around between them, which we did quite a lot. But we did manage to cause them some problems and get up the pitch. So what was the main change there? What was the catalyst?
I think it was the players more than anything, especially the players who got brought on off the bench. Gnonto showed a large amount of desire, and so did Aaronson. Both of them really did look up for this one, and they were making some nice runs, combining nicely with the players around them. And I think in general that rubbed off on the rest of the players, and that just caused the fight back as it stood. Gnonto was the first spark with winning the penalty. Calvert-Lewin scored it, and then from there, Liverpool were shook at that point, I think. And those sort of things, although they are intangible, we can't measure them with stats. They definitely do happen 100%, especially in a ground like Ellen Road when the crowd gets behind the team.
Yeah, it puts Anfield to shame.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it 100% does make a difference. And in this one, I think that is what happens. The crowd working together with the players, and that's the main thing that I would put it down to. I think we were playing more short after the substitutions were made as well. We were, like you said, there were quite often passes around the back line because Liverpool were sitting off, and I think they switched their shape from, it was a 4-4-2 throughout the first half, and it was more of a 4-3-3 in the second, so that there was just sitting there and just trying to block off space, but we were able to play around it at times, and we just showed some really nice combinations, especially with Gnonto and Goodmanson on that left channel, which is something that I'm interested in seeing more of going forward. If we can see Gnonto start a game, that would be lovely again. But yeah, I think that was the main thing for me, was the players, and that's who I want to give the most credit for in this. A lot has been said about giving all the praise to Daniel Farke, but what else could he have done in that situation is what I'd say. He put on the only subs that he was able to put on at that point, and other than putting Sam Byram on, who else was on the bench who could have brought Bornau could have came on a little bit earlier than what he did. I also think he maybe could have made those subs a little bit earlier than what he actually ended up doing. We went 2 goals down, and then he waited an additional 10-15 minutes to make the first sub. So yeah, that for me was a little bit on the slow side after that start to the second half. Clearly we had to do something differently. But yeah, the players, they're the ones who deserve the credit for this one. Tanaka, Gnonto, Aaronson, they all played great coming off the bench and really did make a big impact.
Yeah, I completely agree about them, like essentially demanding the ball, all 3 of them wanting it in pretty weird areas at times. I mean, Gnonto does that quite a lot. He does come quite deep sometimes, but they clearly wanted the ball and they wanted to get on it and they wanted to impress and wanted to get us back into the game. I will give Farke some credit for the sub, because I think he maybe did recognise that the shape wasn't fully working and it made sense to maybe sacrifice a defender to go more attacking. I know what you're saying, like it feels like any manager would have made those subs in the sense of they were the main players on the bench that you were looking to and going, you might be able to do something here, especially in terms of Gnonto and Tanaka. You know what they can do, and they've got that kind of maybe not clutch gene, but like they've got that kind of way of bringing the game back around, a bit more X factor, I guess. So yeah, in that sense, I can understand what you're saying, but I do think Farke recognising that a shape change and those personnel coming on is still some credit to him. And it did improve us for sure. It gave us that impetus. It gave us a little bit more thrust, and suddenly we found ourselves actually getting into their third a bit more. Maybe they shouldn't have set off us. Maybe Slop got that wrong as well. It's probably important to say. Maybe they should have continued to engage us a little bit higher than they were. But
100%.
It is what it is.
They should have done.
It helped.
They should have done.
It helped us. So I'm not complaining. I think Liverpool, probably some nerves for them. In the sense of like, especially at 2-1, but even at 2-0, like, oh wow, we're winning an away game for once. We've kept a clean sheet so far as well. This is unusual for us recently, and yeah, then it all went to shit. Right. One thing I do want to discuss is the fact that they were 2-0 up, Martin. And on the last pod, Jamie asked a question, and I didn't fully have an answer for it. He was basically asking about what's happening after half-time, and then we saw in this game 2 goals immediately after half-time, almost like proving his point. And then Johnny Cooper has since tweeted, and this was like really funny. Leeds have conceded 5 goals in the first 5 minutes of half-time games this season. It's 2 more than any other side in Europe's top 5 league. So it clearly is a problem now. We can't be like brushing this under the carpet as like, oh, it's nothing. There has to be a reason, and there's been quite a few theories out there. I want to hear yours first, but there are quite a few others that I'm going to read out in a second because a lot of people have had their say, and I put it in our admin chat as well. So even people like Darren, a former legend of this pod, has had his say, and John as well. So what's your opinion on the matter?
Well, there's also things. One of the things which you guys said on the last pod, which I listened to, was that it was down to not adapting to managerial changes as quickly as what other managers would, not noticing problems. So those can quickly tell in the opening of the second half. But I would say that it is most likely just lack of concentration in these moments. Both of these goals were caused by mistakes being made. It's not like it was a tactical thing. And yet we were being pressed at the time, but not as much on the first goal. I think that was relatively unpressured from Roden and pretty uncharacteristic. But the second goal, we were definitely being pressed there. Perry put the ball out to Strout when maybe he shouldn't have done that. He should have just thrown it long or just booted it. And then Strout made a poor pass to Goodmanson, and I don't really put too much blame on Goodmanson, really, because it was a very difficult situation there. Yeah, he can sometimes get out of those situations because he's got a very good first touch, and he can sometimes drive forward out of those, but he just wasn't quite able to get the touch before the player nipped in and got the ball, unfortunately. So, yeah, it's unfortunate that those two things happened within the opening 5 minutes, and I would probably put it down to nerves and concentration. Maybe they weren't expecting that first goal to happen, and then that snowballed into second errors. And yeah, because we don't have the best squad in the league in comparison to, well, Liverpool, of course, that they're going to be more prone to making these sorts of errors, and especially at points where they're either towards the end of the game when concentration is lacking because they're tired, and in this opening spell of the half as well, because they're trying to get back to the same level of intensity as what they were before and not quite getting there. So it could be a number of things, but it's a difficult thing to solve, I think, because there's only so much you can do to address that kind of thing. It's a mental thing, and it's the sort of thing that will just hopefully get better with time when the analysts look over it and give them feeders and pointers on things. But I think that's all I can really say, unless you have any advances.
I'm just going to read out everyone's ideas because there was quite a few. Some idiot said they're so demotivated from Farke's awful halftime speech. That could be it, but I don't think it is. Jamie actually theorised he's the one asking the question, do we struggle just to switch back on straight away after half-time? And then he also mentioned about adapting to the opposition, as you mentioned, and we just haven't quite got there before we have the chance to even respond and get maybe messages across the pitch. They've already scored a goal. Chelsea did it, Liverpool did it twice, so of course. Paul mentioned the fact that because he was there and he said Liverpool were back on the pitch a long time before us yesterday. He's not saying that that's a reason, but they were doing warm up and reactivation drills. Maybe they were just a bit more ready for the start of the half, and there's something in that. Darren said that I would say that the second half performances have been a recurring issue through Parker's time. We just didn't get punished from them in the champ. Often it's when we've played well in the first half. I wonder if we're too slow to notice and adapt to tactical changes like we did against Villa. We don't come out with the same intensity as we start the games with, or it's just concentration. And then John mentioned that he thinks it's pretty sure it's just concentration issues, and the level of intensity in the first 15 minutes after the break is potentially something to look at. So yeah, all of that. But it is a weird one. I think it's probably a combination of things, and we do need to just start them quicker. Maybe we need to settle into them better by just if you struggling to get back into the game straight away, like taking lots of touches is a bit iffy and you're a bit nervous, just boot it. Just go along if you have to and just put the ball in their half, and then you kind of warm into the half, I guess. So a weird one, but something to keep an eye on going forward, especially because it's now happened obviously 3 times in a week this week, but it's also happened another 2 times this season, which is, as Johnny Cooper says, the most in the European leagues, top 5 leagues. We then had a question about directness that you wanted to discuss, Martin. Again, we're on this theme. We're probably going to be talking about this quite a lot over the next few pods. Do we think that Varka will play direct against teams other than the top 6? This is something you want to answer, but I think it's an interesting one. We were talking it a little bit this in our admin group earlier as well, and whether we might go back to being a bit more dominant against Brentford, and maybe I saw a good friend of the pod, Jack, on Twitter talking about shape against Brentford, and he's actually advocating for maybe going to 4-3-3 and obviously playing a bit more of your possession-based players. If that's what we're going to do against them, then we should actually go back to the 4-3-3 rather than 3-5-2. And so, yeah, there's definitely a case where we're going to change back, right? Especially because of the way yesterday ended. We went to a 4-3-3 and we managed to score 3 goals in half an hour. So is that going to be on Farke's mind, do you think, against Brentford?
Yeah, I definitely think we will see some changes to either the shape or the style, potentially both. I do think that he will want to press the ball more against Brentford, and that could be the right way to approach it, but it shouldn't be so strict as what we have seen in previous games. If we have the opportunity to go along, if we think there's a good moment to do so, then we should attempt it still. It shouldn't be that we're just only looking to keep the ball and playing really patient football against Brentford, because I think they will generally do well against that. They're the sort of side who is happy to allow opponents to have the ball. For a long time under Thomas Frank, they were as well, and I think that theme has continued under Keith Andrews, although I will admit I've not watched too many of their games. So I'm not sure what I would want without actually looking into Brentford some more, personally. So maybe I'll have some more answers on this one on the preview for Brentford, to see what would work against them in particular. It shouldn't ever be one that we always play direct or we always press the ball. We just need to be versatile and keep teams guessing as to how we're going to set up. I mean, it could even be a 3-4-3. That could give us a good mesh of the other two styles. We'd have the back three, which will help with the build-up, of course, and then we'll have the three in the front areas who will help us attack with a bit more impetus. So there's definitely solutions to ways to it, and I'm just hopeful that Farke gets the right solution in this one. But we'll see what Brentford look like when we do our preview in a few days.
Indeed. Fundamentally, I do think Farke is a coach that, we spoke about this on the last pod, but he's one that likes control of matches through possession. So I do think he'll want to at least somewhat. But like you say, maybe it's a mesh of styles. Maybe it's a mesh of systems and styles. Maybe it's a bit of both. And we're a bit more kind of two-way, which is probably the better way to be honest. You know, being a bit more adaptable in that sense, seeing when you can go short and when you can go long, rather than having to do one or the other all the time. But I just foresee him, thinking he can outplay some of these teams like Brentford and Palace that we've got coming up. And maybe it'll be true. Like, we've obviously got, like, Palace will probably be playing at quite a good time. I think people have started to notice this, but they're scheduling with cup games and European games and league games all before Christmas means they've got the worst schedule in the league of any team, and we're playing them at almost the perfect time to be playing them, really. It means they're going to have like a 2-day rest. So they're going to have to play in either the European game or the league game a pretty weak inside. And I imagine in that game in particular, sorry to skip ahead of Brentford, but I imagine in that game in particular, with us being at home, that Farke's going to think we can dominate it and we can probably take the game to them, especially if they're a bunch of kids or a mixture. They've got some experience, some kids. Nathaniel Klein played today for Palace. Nathaniel Klein has barely played any Premier League games for the last few years, but I guess they're probably thinking, well, he needs to get some sharpness into him because of the games you've got coming up. And they probably had some injury issues as well. I think Munoz had a knee issue. So anyway, I'm sidetracking towards Palace there, but the point is, I do think this isn't suddenly like a one-size-fits-all scenario for Farke where he's going to bring this game plan into every single fixture going forward. But yeah, let's talk about the directness of the performance then, Martin, in both halves, because you have got this on the running order. This is not a question. This is something you've put down. So do you want to discuss to our listeners and watchers what was happening in both halves in terms of our passes, in terms of our build-up, in terms of the types of pass we were playing?
Yeah, so in the first half, there was a lot more direct balls. Perry was for pretty much all of his actions were going long. In fact, one of his actions went from the edge of our box to Liverpool's 6-yard box, which is a very, very long kick. Could be a throw, who knows, with Perry, because he's got a very long throw in him. But yeah, so most of his actions were going long, and that was the theme that started right from the beginning of the half. And there were also a lot of passes from players as well, which were going long into sort of the wide areas, looking to play balls down the channel for Okafor to get onto. And in the second half, I think this started around when the substitutes were made, but you can see such a difference in the two half things. In fact, just for the people on YouTube, I'm going to actually share my screen. Apologies to the people who are listening on the pod, but you'll have to bring it up on YouTube and then you can see it. 1 second. I'll get my screen shared.
Go to YouTube now. Go.
Right. So as you can see here, that this is a pass map from the first half. So you can say there's not a whole lot of short passes there. You can see all the long passes that I'm mentioning from Perry, including that one which went right to the 6-yard box of Liverpool. And then if we scroll down to the second half, you can just see the total of the volume of passes, especially around this middle of the park, from all our midfielders and centre backs, and Stack, the number 18, popping up around there a lot on that left channel. You can see even Joe Perot getting involved there around the halfway line. So there's such a difference between the first half and the second. Is really what I'm trying to say here, that it was pretty stark with a difference, and I'd probably expect that to continue against Brentford. We'll probably see more of what was looking like in the second half of this one. Probably no matter what the base style is, if we do go back to the 4-3-3 or if it is a 3-5-2, because like we said, a shape doesn't mean what style you're going to be in. If you look at a back three coached by Thomas Tuchel, for example, you're not going to see direct football, are you? You're going to see short possession play. If you see a 3-5-2 coached by Thomas Frank, it's going to be direct. If you see whichever formation you like, where all the different types of formations that we saw under Marcelo Bielsa, we played it exactly the same way in every single style, no matter what shape we had. We've always played the same way with the ball. So I think that's the main thing that we're trying to stress here, is that it isn't linked to the shape, and we can play a 3-5-2 and play possession football, or we can play 4-3-3 and play direct football. That's the main thing, really.
Loving that our YouTube watchers just got a bit of an insight into the all stats aren't we running order, including a screenshot of the Discord and a section which said insert ad break time, which is fantastic. I'm sure that was riveting content. Yeah, this is the end of this section, but I just wanted to say something before we move on to the player section, which is actually on the players, but in the style that Martin's describing. I think it is like so obvious that these two things go hand in hand and they affect each other performances of the players and the performances of the team in terms of how they're set up tactically. And I think the narrative has shifted a little bit with some players, for some fans. I've seen a lot more praise for Anton Stach this week after quite a lot of criticism. Again, maybe not so much the Liverpool game, but the Chelsea game in particular really suited him stylistically. Just quite a few of them, it feels like people are on board with now. And I think the squad is in kind of a better place with the fan base, which I'm really happy for. I think obviously it's great this week that we've come out of it and we've got to 15 points outside of the relegation zone. To have come out of Man City, Chelsea and Liverpool to have improved our league position is exceptional, to be brutally honest. But also is the fact that, like I say, like a lot of fans are really on board with some of these players now. And it was mentioned in our group chat, and I completely agree with this, about the fact that, you know, you've lost 6 in 7 in total in the league. Like, it can be quite demoralising. It can be a big knock to confidence, especially when you thought, oh, we're going into Chelsea, Liverpool and City in this space of a week. How's it going to be? How are we going to look? We might end up losing like 8 of the next 9, 9 of the next 10, whatever it might be. Instead, you go and get 4 points. And if you go back to the City game at half time, we've essentially won a half, 2-1 against City, a full game, 3-1 against Chelsea, and then drawn 3-0 with Liverpool. Like, that is brilliant over the last, 225 minutes of league football. So absolutely delighted with that. But now the tester and the Square Ball boys mentioned this on their show, and I completely agree. Where Farke will be judged is how he navigates these next games, because yeah, everyone's feeling better about the players and how we're looking again, but things can shift quickly back if we don't play this, the game plan right against Brentford and Palace. We don't pick up some points. These are the games that are going to matter, and it's quite possible that the team is set up to be more underdog, is set up to be looking better physically and in terms of chance creation against better sides like Chelsea and Liverpool. And now we need to see whether we'll be able to do that against Brentford, Palace, and the like. In the Sunderland is the other one, isn't it? In those games, can we actually have the right game plan? Can we actually go toe to toe with those teams and not roll over them? Because it's possible Leeds are a team this season that actually prefer the big games, prefer the harder teams. I don't know. We'll probably know more in time. But anyway, that's the end of this section. We're going to move on and talk about players and a few other questions that you guys have got for us as well.
Sorry to interrupt. Just a quick one. If you're enjoying the video, be sure to like and subscribe to help us keep the content coming. And if you want even more, you can support us over on patreon.com/ASAW Patreon. You'll get bonus podcasts, exclusive articles, and access to our Discord community, all while helping us make more of the content you love. Thanks. Now let's get back to it.
Right, let's move on to the second half of the analysis, where we'll discuss specific players' performances in a bit more detail, and we'll get some of the questions in from you guys. Wiggy on Twitter asked, what a roller coaster. But I think the big question is more looking forward. How do we set up against Brentford away? From the game, Okafor didn't show as much as usual. Brendan Aronson as an impact sub worked, and Farke was more adaptable than expected. I'm not going to answer this, Wiggy, because you know full well we're going to talk about this on the Brentford preview. So I'm just going to give a nod to your question and say that will be the Brentford preview. But I agree that Okafor didn't maybe show as much as I'd hoped, and we had bigged him up a bit, Martin, and I just wanted to talk about him very quickly before we move on. We bigged him up as someone who might work in the 3-5-2 as a kind of runner in behind, but it does seem he prefers the ball to feet, and that might be an issue because he wasn't really given any opportunities at all to run in behind, and the few opportunities he did get to run at the opposition, he looked a bit more threatening, but still the attack seemed to break down a lot. It wasn't the best game from him in possession, I have to say.
I just don't think that the setup worked overall in the first half either. So he was on for the most time when the whole setup wasn't really working that well. So it's a bit unfair to judge just him for it. I think he had, like I said earlier, he had a very good snapshot early off when he did some nice combination with Calvert-Lewin early on, and yeah, he could have done better maybe, but it's still quite early days for us to us playing this system. So I think with time it'll come. He did well against Chelsea in this system, and there's no reason why he can't do that again. He was a real threat when he came off the bench against Chelsea, so maybe it's one of those where he could be more of a threat off the bench with that extra energy that he's got, and direct running could cause problems in second halves. We'll see what things happen and what shape we play against Brentford as to whether he'll be playing, or maybe if he could be even Benonto if he's impressed enough to get a start.
Right, Martin, let's break down the goals, which we always do in this section. Let's go through the first two first. Let's leave the third on its own. We don't need to do that. We're talking about the Liverpool goals here. Who or what was at fault in these ones? I know it feels obvious with a couple of them, but let's properly talk about it, because it's not as simple as you think with this. I don't think the second one. I think there's a couple of things at play. The first one perhaps is simple, right?
Yeah, the first one is Joe Rodon. There's no one else you can put a blame for that. He played a poor pass, which Ampadu was not in the right position for. He should have probably a safer option was to play it back to Perry, but he kind of put it in between Ampadu and Perry. So when neither of them had the chance to get to it. So yeah, just a mistake by Rodon, who's usually been very assured this season. So yeah, he'll learn from that. He 100% will, and he did do well for the rest of the game, I felt. So hopefully he doesn't let it affect him too much and just gets on with doing as well as what he has been for most of this season.
Yeah, I think part of the reason to just give Joe Rodon a bit of a defence, even though it's like a really poor pass, he's hit it too hard behind Ampadu. Like, that's just a recipe for disaster, because then he's got to turn all the way around to try and retrieve it, and by that time it was too late. I don't even think Liverpool's press was that aggressive in that moment, so it was like It didn't need to be that rushed. Like, it had a bit to it, but it wasn't like, oh my god, they're coming at us at a million miles an hour. It was just like, yeah, anyway. And then Ekitike obviously snapped it up because he read that was going to be what happened, and it was good striking instincts from him. But it was definitely just quite naive from us with the ball in general. I think what happened was, just going back to the first section of the pod, like, we weren't able to make the ball stick in there third enough with either Calvert-Lewin winning a header himself. There was one in particular where Van Dijk just absolutely towered over him and destroyed him in one moment. But even without that, like, we just weren't able to get a lot of the second balls in midfield as much as usual. So we probably were deciding to go a bit shorter at the start of the second half, and that was naive. And then
I don't think that was the case, if I'm honest.
You don't?
No, I was looking out for that in particular at the start of the second half, and one of the first actions we did was a long ball from Perry upfield. So I think all was going to do in that situation was Rodon was going to pass it to Ampadu was going to pass it to Perry, and then it would have been launched forward.
But that's the point, isn't it? You've said it, like, maybe then should have just gone to Perry, just bypass the Ampadu pass. You don't need to do it.
That's what I mean. He maybe he was trying to pass it to Perry and just got it wrong, or whoever he was trying to pass it to, he got it wrong. But yeah, I don't think it was that we were going long, going short, because we were going long quite a bit in the opening 10 minutes of that half. Even after the goals were scored, we were going long still. It was mainly after the substitutions were made that we started going a lot shorter. I paid attention to that part of it a lot just to make sure that if Farke had told them at half time to play patient, boys, play patient, we might be better, but that wasn't the case.
I'm asking my listeners this. Can you tell who's done some of a rewatch and who's done a full rewatch? I think you can. So thanks, Martin. I appreciate that. Didn't have the time today to do a full one. The second goal, then, I think there's a couple of players here, and it's not just like, oh, Goodmanson gave it away, so it's him. Like, there is a split second where I think Goodmanson has a hesitation where he shouldn't, and he should just boot it. But he then thinks, no, I can do something with this, and it was the wrong decision. So maybe you're going to give like 15% of the blame to him, but it's mainly Perry and Straug, because Perry shouldn't do that. He should have gone long straight away. There was no need. Yes, the game had become a bit frantic after just going a goal down, and maybe we were a bit panicked and there was a bit of nerves in the ground and all that. I get that. But him paying it to Straug was the wrong decision. I don't actually think Straug anticipated that was going to happen. And then suddenly it all goes wrong, because then Straug plays a ball that is probably not quite perfect. He probably slightly overhits it more than he wants to. and Goodmanson doesn't want it there, and he probably doesn't expect Struijk to do that either. So Perry's caused a kind of knock-on effect there, which wasn't great. It's put both him and Goodmanson under pressure there, Struijk and Goodmanson, that is. So I'd probably say it's still mostly Struik's fault, but like, there's definitely a bit of Perry, because Struijk can definitely like rectify the situation. But there's definitely a bit of Perry and a little bit of Goodmanson as well, just because I think he could probably boot it. So that's where I'm at with that. I'm sure you probably mostly agree with that.
Well,
but the third...
My issue with the second was the Sky cameras. They don't really show anything above because when Perry gets the ball, when he picks it up, they zoom in on him. So you can't see what's going on around him. You can't see where the Liverpool players are, and then the next thing it cuts to is Struijk like passing the ball, like and there's no in between. You see him throw the ball, but you don't see him receive it or anything like that. And even the replays of it only really focus on Goodmanson losing the ball and then the cross being put in. So you don't really get a good view of what the pressing situation looked like to say whether Perry was 100% at fault. But with how quickly Struijk was closed down, I'm going to expect that there was a player pretty close to Struijk in that instance. So I'm going to put some on Perry and then some on Struijk. I'm not putting really any on Goodmanson because he was left in a very difficult situation. I think he could have, if he wanted to play it long, I don't think he would have had the chance to get it there either because the ball was past him. I think what he was trying to do was that thing where he normally does when he's under pressure, take a touch past the player and then drive forward with it. That's what he was trying to do. But Bradley got there just before him, nipped in and got the ball before him. So again, I watched this play too many times because I was trying to find a bloody angle which Sky would give me, which I liked, and so I couldn't find any that I liked.
I think with Perry, like, he doesn't even need to just frantically like, oh, let's attack. Like 1-0 down, it's fine. We've got loads of time. So he didn't need to release it that quickly, even if he was going long or short.
Just settle down. Do that thing that goalkeepers do. Just calm down, lads. Calm down, lads.
Take this thing out of the game. I know we're 1-0 down, but you don't have to be so panicked. So that was a bit silly, lacking a bit of composure. And then the third goal, Martin. We've already talked quite a lot about the first two here, but this one, like, I genuinely think there are so many little things in this move.
So many.
And it's not one player here at all. There are just so many knock-on effects at different points in the chain where you can go, oh, you probably shouldn't have done that there. Like I'm not going to call him out, but I saw one guy mentioning Struijk was mainly at fault. I was just like, I genuinely think some of our fans have a problem with him and find anything they can, and I just don't get it. And then you've got, and I'm not saying he's completely blameless because we'll talk about it in a second, but I just couldn't understand that. And then you've got Farke himself making a very big point to go over to Tanaka, clearly to talk about that and what he was doing on that goal. So he's getting some blame too. But in your opinion, having watched it probably 5 or 6 times, who are you mostly blaming? Because for me, I think a couple of midfielders get pulled out there and are caught ball watching and are not tracking runs. And then from that moment onwards, everything falls apart, in my opinion.
Well, I think what you saw the ball get passed around a bit by Liverpool, and Tanaka stepped out to put pressure on them, which obviously left a space behind him. And I think that was what Farke was going on at Tanaka about, was that he'd pushed out the press, and he shouldn't have done. And yeah, maybe he didn't need to put that pressure on there. It would have been better to stay in shape, but it was a pretty minor thing, in my opinion. And then when the ball was passed around him and then through, Ampadu just put his arm out to indicate someone to pick up. Was it Wirtz? Was it who did the dummy? I forget who it was who did the dummy. I think it was Wirtz.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, and so that he put his arm out for someone else to pick up Wirtz, but who else was going to be picking him up, mate? No one else was going to be picking him up. And then by the time because he was with him who was marking Wirtz, and then when the pass was played through to Gravenberch, and he left Wirtz for no one, and there was someone commented that these 2 centre backs were pulled over to the left, and yeah, they were, but I think that was mainly because Liverpool had just played it over to their left hand side. So naturally, when the ball comes over to one side, the whole defence does the same thing and moves across. I think maybe there was too big of a gap between Goodmanson and Strauch. I think that was the main area. Maybe I think Goodmanson could have been tucked in a little bit more than what he was. He didn't tuck in long, but then he was maybe expecting Wirtz to pick up that pass, but he didn't. He dummied it, which was great. And yeah, it was a great pass by Gravenberch, great dummy by Wirtz, great individual play by Liverpool players, first of all, I just want to say. And sometimes these things happen. Could we have prevented it? Yeah, we maybe could have. If I think 2 or 3 players made a slightly different movement, but then even when couldn't have been stopped if it was done as well as what it was. But it's just one of those things which happen when a number of players don't do the 100% correct thing, and I don't think I'd like to put it on any one player. It's just a chain of actions which led to a good goal being scored, which was crap. But I didn't enjoy Farke going off on Tanaka like he did. Like he'd only been on the pitch for about 10 minutes. So yeah, it's not the best. But we move, and hopefully they'll learn from that and not leave those sorts of spaces. And yeah,
there was a bit of discussion about this in the Discord as well, and like a lot of them were saying, you know, sometimes it is just the quality of the opposition and the players they've got, and it's sometimes if you are just like 2 or 3% off with each action of each player, of our players, that is, then you know, you just get carved apart. And it was a really good goal. Like, it was definitely one of the better goals I've seen all weekend in the Premier League. Unfortunately against us, but I agree, and I think you can even add a few other bits, like at the last couple of actions, in terms of, obviously, like you've mentioned, where there were issues in, you know, further in the chain, but at the very end of it, when Szoboszlai actually is about to receive the ball, Goodmanson, if you look at it back, Goodmanson and Nyonso don't even look round. I think Goodmanson has a bit of an issue, like, switching off in these situations. There have been a couple like this now that he's done just this week, and there's been a few this season as well. I still think he's been fabulous. I think he's been a great signing. But he definitely has a couple of lapses in these moments. But even, like I say, Nyonso doesn't even look. They don't look. And that makes a big difference. Obviously, it's not fully their fault because they're having to react to other people in the chain, getting things slightly off. But it's frustrating. I'm not digging those two out. I'm just saying it was just that final bit that even that could have maybe been prevented at the last moment had Goodmanson looked round a split second earlier and maybe moved a different way. But it is difficult to defend in terms of, from our perspective, like, it's just quality from a really quality team, and it showed it. And even Szoboszlai's finish was ice cold. Like, it was really, really good. So yeah, there's that. That's all done. That was probably a lot longer, that section, than I wanted it to be, but it's fine. We're going to quickly go through these next few before we get to the end. Jamie in the Discord said, and this is a genuine fear, I think, at the moment, with us playing with 2 strikers. And obviously we've even seen it in this game where we didn't have one of them available. He said, what do we do if Calvert-Lewin and Lucas Mecha are both broken at the same time? Martin, what are your thoughts on that?
I do not want to think about that. But it is definitely a possibility. But hopefully it won't be for too long. But if that was to happen, it would be a case of playing probably Joel Perreault as a striker. And if that was what we'd have to do, Farke would have to find ways to adapt around that. Because, you know, when Joel Perreault's playing, he's not going to be occupying centre-backs. He's not going to be winning aerial duels. So going direct would be totally out the window, and we wouldn't have that threat there. So you would have you'd have to play possession style football. It's the only way that Joel Perreault works in a side is to play a possession orientated game. He didn't work great in our side while he'd been playing in the Championship, but he still scored a lot of goals. I'm not saying he'll do that at this level, of course, but that's the only way you could do it, I think. There's arguments for Nyonto playing in that role, but he's never really played as a central striker, more with a 2. So you could maybe play the 2 of them together, but it wouldn't be ideal at all. But when these 2 starting strikers are injured at the same time, nothing's ever going to be ideal. So yeah, but maybe I'll say what I told Jamie in Discord. Play Pascal Strauch there, because
he can win some aerials.
He's got good ball striking. He can win aerial duels. Yeah, I could. And he was a striker in his early days as well. I'm pretty certain he was. But yeah, That's a joke, of course, before anyone takes me too seriously.
Tommy agrees. Tommy agrees.
I know. I mainly put that in for Tommy, if I'm totally honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't like to think of it.
I've got a couple of solutions. First of all, it depends on the game. I agree with you. It would probably be Joel Peru, and it would probably be a game where you could try and play a bit more possession based. And there are some home games, not many, but there are a few left that we could probably do that and get away with it. It might work. However, most away games it wouldn't. And if that's the case, and we're against a team that are going to dominate the ball, and we want to play counter attack, just play your 3 quickest forwards. Just play all 3 of them. And just launch that ball and get them to chase it into channels. Obviously, the opposition might then sit a bit deeper, but that might be all right for us because we might suddenly have a little bit more where we can look after it in deeper areas ourselves. And
who would be the quickest 3 you'd pick? And bearing in mind that James isn't available now.
Okay, that's thrown me off because obviously, like I'm saying about let's say this is in March and Calvert-Lewin and Metro are out. Right. James is back. Okafor's back. So those 2 are obviously straight in. Okafor probably down the middle as much as it wouldn't be fantastic. I mean, I've just had another thought. You just play those 2 wingers and you play Joel Peru and you play him as like a false 9 and you just get him to ping balls out to them, but I'm not sure that would work fully, but you could maybe coach it. But no, I think those 2. The third quickest winger is difficult because I don't any of us are rapid. I think Yonto's pretty quick, and so maybe him. But it wouldn't be great. I think Harrison looks slower than he used to. Aronson's reasonably quick, but I don't particularly want him to start games for Leeds United much. I can't really think of anyone else. But yeah, that's one solution. The other solution, which is probably the more obvious one, that's like staring us in the face, mine. Well, there's 2 actually. I've just thought of another one. Harry Gray. But I'm joking. The proper one, the one I'm not joking about, is there's a certain striker that's a contract in the Championship until January who's just scored 2 goals in 4 games for his new club.
I don't think he'd want to come back, if I'm totally honest. That's the way we treat him.
He'd have to move out.
I don't think he would want to come back, although I would snap your hand off at that, to be totally honest. Yeah, I love Pat. And yeah, but no. It would be interesting to see if Harry Gray would get a look in that circumstance.
I think he probably would, just because like he can probably look after the ball at the very least from a sort of technical point of view. Physically, you won't be able to. He's a decent enough athlete, like getting in behind, but I think it would just be a throw him in and see how he would do type situation.
Yeah.
He might be ready, he might not. We don't know yet. I'm hoping he kind of gets a loan in January. We might actually sign a striker of some description in the window, and I'm not being serious about Patrick Bamford, but I do love the bloke, and I'm glad to see him score. That was a really well-taken header he got at the weekend. I don't know how to answer this one, Martin, because I think what this is referring to is something that was mentioned on the last pod from Dan, which is that we sort of saying, like, what I was describing, he said, that sounds quite Red Bully. And Oxist on Blue Sky said, are we going full Red Bull by proxy, or is it just the madness of Leeds? And I don't really know how to answer it unless he means that we're starting to look a bit more Red Bully when we go along. I don't fully know. If you don't have an answer yourself, it's fine. We can move on.
No, I don't really see too much Red Bulliness in the way we attack, other than trying to create chances from counter-pressing. That's the most Red Bully, I think, that we get is the out-of-possession stuff. But in possession, I don't think it is very Red Bully. We do have more width in us than what Jesse ever had us play. So, no, I don't think that we are going Red Bull by proxy. Oxist.
Yeah, unless he means something more off the pitch involved. But I don't know. Oxist, if you want to message us on Twitter, on Blue Sky, sorry, not Twitter, please do, because I don't really know what you mean. Just give us a follow-up on that one. There was a lot made of the goalkeeper here, who we've already said bit iffy on that second goal, just for his role in it. Don't think he can do much about the first, it's just a quality finish. Don't think he can do anything about the third, it's just a quality finish. But then outside of the second goal, where you can maybe give him a bit of blame, he might have had his best game for us here, in the sense that he gave us a couple of really big moments through saves. A couple of big saves from Van Dijk. There was also that Isak chance at the end, which when I first saw it, and I do normally wear glasses, and I was wearing glasses at the time, maybe I just need to up my prescription. I thought he'd saved that, and then it went out for a goal kick, so he didn't. But I think he was going to get there. I do think he was going to get there. I think he had that covered, even though it was a good header from Isak. So all in, I know that's not a save, but all in all, it just felt like he was good in that department. And how did you feel about him? Do you think it was his best game for us? We might have conceded 3 goals, but apart from that second one, like what you say, there wasn't much he could have done on the other 2 at all whatsoever.
No, I don't think that there was too much he could do about most of the goals. Maybe the second one, but I think that's mainly about him distributing it short than the actual saving it, because I think he did all he could to intercept that cross before Ekitike got to it, and he hurt himself in the process as well of doing that. So he showed bravery. But yeah, those saves that he made when it was 3-2, I think it was it 3-2 or was it when it was still 2-2? I'm not sure.
I think it was 3.
I think it was 3-2.
3-2, yeah.
Yeah. I think it was when it was 3-2, and those were some big saves. There was 2 from corners and 1 just before a corner as well, which was a really good save. And a few of those were ones where the post-shot XG was higher than what the original chance was, so they made them decent efforts. And especially Van Dijk's header, that was a top-class save. So I do think that we have to give him some praise for that. I would like him to work on his distribution still. That is something which it has been an issue in most of the games. There's always been little things here and there, but it will take time. First time playing in the Premier League, first time playing in amongst this side, so I'm willing to give time on that. But the biggest thing is making these big saves, and I think if he wouldn't have made those saves, we wouldn't have got any points out of this one. Most likely we would have lost. It would have been 4-2 at that point, and yeah, we wouldn't have got a draw. So got to give him some praise for that, I think.
Yeah, almost identical. The Konate and Van Dijk chances that he saved, 0.04 chances turned to about 0.24, 0.25. So he's definitely done really well on those ones, considering they were difficult and they were hit pretty powerfully as well. I agree. I feel a bit better towards him actually after this game than I have others. I think he actually was pretty decent here. I still think he's a bit of an issue with his kicking, obvious, and a bit of an issue with commanding his box for someone so big, kind of obvious too, but it's not the end of the world. And I'm enjoying broadly just having a better shot stopper. I still think he is our best goalkeeper, even if I thought he'd be more of an upgrade, as we've mentioned recently, than he has been on Darlow. But that's that. Right, let's talk about the subs then, and let's end this pod because we've only got a couple more questions now. This is it, and one more. And particularly just how they did, Martin, because they really were some of the standouts in that second half. Like, Brendan Aronson deserves some flowers. He didn't just get a lovely assist where, like I was talking about earlier, he demanded the ball. He's brought on, I think he was on the right? It's just that he was ended up in a central space and then thought, actually, I'm going to combine with players on the left here and we're going to create an overload, and it worked, and we were able to get the ball there and we were able to keep the ball there, and a good combination with Nonto, a good 1-2, then suddenly releases Stack. Lovely, just lovely. And he at one point even looked like he's going to lose it, or he looked like he was a bit lost, but actually he just recovered it and it looked really good. The only thing I didn't like was that really weak shot that he did, which was absolutely awful. But other than that, everything else was pretty good, and that's the kind of cameo I want to see from him. So he was good. I think everyone was pretty pleased with Nonto, not just winning the penalty, but like just showing a bit, like getting on the ball, wanting to make things happen. I think one of his crosses was, again, atrocious, but it went out for a corner and we knew we were doing well from corner, so didn't mind that. And then I don't want to talk about Tanaka yet because I've got a piece on him in a minute, but yeah, do you want to talk about any of those three?
Yeah, I'll echo everything that you said. Aronson was really good when he came on. He was threatening. He was generally making the right decision outside of that shot. I did shout when he made that shot, like, no, do not shoot from outside the box, Brendan. That is not your thing.
It's just,
don't do it,
man.
Yeah.
Like, it's school stuff, sorry, but it really irritated me. Like, if you need to get power, you either need to lean back, which is not the way to do it. You can do it. Or you need to really get your foot through it. And he just sort of he didn't do either. He just kind of limply shot at. It really annoyed me. Carry on.
Yeah. Don't want to labour on that too much because he did do well overall. I will say that it was probably his best performance for us so far, even though it was only like a half an hour spell, but he did really well in this one, and I hope that he does continue with doing that. I do think that he could well be a better threat for us off the bench, because I think with his energy levels, him coming on at that side, it does a number of things for us. It helps us in an attacking sense because we've got someone with fresh legs who has got a decent amount of pace behind him. He's got a good ball carrying, and probably more importantly, he's very good out of possession, and that does help things. Lots of intensity, and it's the sort of thing that you do need late on in games, is someone who can just buzz around and be an annoyance for the opponent, and that is what he can be. Then Tanaka was superb, just really doing all that he could to dictate the tempo, getting involved with as much of the passing moves as what he could do. And obviously Nyonta winning the penalty was superb. Just the little fake cross that he did just before Konate took him out, that's what did it, because he was threatening to cross it, but then he didn't. He kept hold of it. He knew the challenge was going to come. He did definitely bait it. I am saying that he was waiting for that challenge to come in, and it did, and we won a penalty from it. So yeah, give him props for that as well, and his other actions. He's just combining really nicely with Goodmanson and with Stack on that side. And yeah, the substitutes really did make a big impact in this game.
Right. Tanaka then, just quickly from me. Like, he's now scored, we're calling it 8 goals, Martin, because he scored against Borough and it counted in our opinion. So he's scored 8 goals for Leeds in our opinion. Of those 8, it's just remarkable this one. I looked back and I looked at all the goals as well. So it was a lovely experience just having 5 minutes to watch all these back for myself. He scored now what I would consider a screamer against Hull, a screamer against Chelsea, and a borderline screamer against Millwall, where he just rips it into the top corner from just inside the box. He then scored a flick against Sheffield Wednesday. So 4 of his goals have been either screamers or flicks. Like, just an absolutely wonderful player. Like, he's a midfielder. What's he doing? He's doing these wonderful, magical things. That's great. The other 4 goals that Tanaka scored for Leeds are all the exact same goal, including that Borough one that didn't count but does count. And you and I said it at the same time in 2 different places. You said it in Discord and I said it in Twitter, and it was funny. Like, I saw the message straight after. Back post Tanaka goals. And against Chelsea, he was actually part of the rest defence. He wasn't in the box for corners. But here he was. And if you remember last season, it was great. He got that one against, let me go through these. The one against Sheffield United, which obviously incredible, iconic, amazing moment. One of my favourite Leeds goals of recent times. The one against Bristol City in the 4-0 game, which again was just brilliant because that was a big celebration day. The one against Borough, again, we're counting. And then he's done it now against Liverpool too. So 4 of his 8 goals have just been him being around the back post. And I can't believe that Liverpool haven't done work on this and not known that if he came on, that there wasn't a chance that he was going to be sniffing around that spot where he's excellent. But another thing to add as well is the difference between a lot of these goals at the back post. Like, they are all at the back post, but they are different. Like, he scored a header. He scored a tap in against Bristol City, essentially, just like fell on the ball almost. It just went in. The Borough one was a bit more similar to that, but then this one here, where he's had to absolutely smash it with his left foot, keep it down, and then go into the roof of the net. Absolutely loved it, and he's great at it. And suddenly, he's signed for Leeds in August of last year. Every single one of his goals has come since January this year. He scored that one against Hull, and he's not looked back. He scored 8 goals this year. Again, like I say, it's actually 7, but it's 8. And I love him. He is wonderful. Easily one of my favourite players in this team. He was our best player last season, and I will stand by that. It wasn't Dan James, as many voted, in my opinion. It wasn't Joe Rodon, as a lot of other people voted. They were great, and they were really, really good performers. But for me, it was Tanaka. And I'm glad to see him get back into the team. It was disappointing to see him dropped here, but I can understand why after Farke's comments about him being a bit sore and a bit sort of not ready for a full 90. But he came on, he scored 2 goals in a week against Chelsea and Liverpool. It's incredible. Fair play to him. So just wanted to pour out my heart to Tanaka and say that teams need to switch on a bit more to this. Do you want to love Tanaka, or can I move on?
Yeah, I do want to love Snacker. You're not going to hog him all for yourself, you greedy bugger. Yeah, he was fantastic again. I've already said, but it's incredible that teams don't pick up on this. Just little Tanaka sat at the back post, just tapping balls in. It's it's genius in a way, really, because you've got all these big guys making runs, and it's because the chaos that they create. Because we've got so many of them. Because at that point, we just brought on Bornau as well. So we had Bornau, we had Strauch, we had Roden, we had Stack, although was he on the corner? He was on the corner, wasn't he? Yeah, he was on the corner. We had Calvert-Lewin. We had, who else was big in there? Ampadu. So yeah, you've got 5 big guys who are causing problems, and they weren't the target of it at all. Tanaka was a target of that cross. You can see it, the way it curved across. Yeah, one of the players could have got a header onto it if they met it right, but the ultimate target of it was Tanaka, and it's happened so many times, like you've already mentioned, all the goals, and yeah, it's just superb, and I'm so happy for him because he's such a lovely guy, and his English has come along really nicely as well. In the post-match interview, he's improved so much in a year. Like I was so impressed. Like, it's such a difficult language to learn is English, especially from being Japanese. It's a totally new alphabet that you're having to learn. Never mind the speaking of it as well. So massive props to him to doing better in the language department, but keep up the football stuff because that's, great player.
They do say it's easier to pick up the language when you live in the country, and Hosty lived in Germany for a year, and his German improved immensely. He's told me before in that time, so not altogether surprised at that. But I've loved. I'm Gen Z, so I do have TikTok. Unfortunately, some people listening, we are on TikTok, by the way. If you want to go and follow us on there, if you don't already, we post little clips of us on there. So by all means, do go do that. And I watched a lot of edits of Tanaka, and it was really. It was a really enjoyable experience this morning, waking up doing that. Watched like four or 5 different ones. I love him immensely. He's one of my favourite players. Sick Cross, we'll shout him out. He just said, how much time is Farke giving himself? This is all he cares about. So why I'm talking about this. How much time is Farke giving himself with these 2 recent results? The next 3 games, maybe even more. He's hoping, you and I go, nah, if he loses another, he's off. But that's not the case now. He's definitely bought himself some time. He's definitely shown some adaptation. He showed adaptation mid-game against City and in this Liverpool game in particular, where he's changed the shape in both games. He's gone back to a 4-3-3 here, and it worked. So he's definitely not going to be sacked anytime soon. I think as long as we are hovering around 1 point per game, give or take a point or 2 either way, I just can't see it at the moment. I know that the results overall over the last, 10 games now, not looking particularly amazing still. But this week has been a huge week, and everyone is definitely feeling a lot more optimistic about us if we can suddenly translate performances against big teams into performances against some slightly lesser opposition and see how that looks. So do you have anything to say on this at all?
So, yeah, first of all, on Sick, I think he already knows. He knows that Farke's got time now. He's got at least the next 3 to 4 games. I think as long as he sticks to the point of game margin, he'll be fine. But I think he does need to be winning at least one of these next 2 games, in my opinion. Next 2 games, one of them has to be a win there, because if it's not, then and you don't maybe you pick up a point from these next 2, then the games following that are harder. I know we've just come across the 3 most difficult games in a row so far, and we nearly got a point from City, got 3 against Chelsea, and got a point against Liverpool. So maybe the more difficult games aren't as bad as what we're expecting them to be because of the type of team we are and the way we can cause problems. So it might not be that much of an issue, but we'll see how that goes going forward. There's other sides who are like that, like Brighton, for example. They're much better at playing against better sides in the league. Obviously, they beat us. So that means we're one of the better sides in the league. Yay, go us. Definitely not for other reasons, tactical. Anyway, so I think he has definitely bought himself some time, and hopefully he can continue and show that he can be adaptable and not use the same shape and the same style every single time. And I think that will definitely be on the minds of the board as well. There will be some people who know ball in amongst the topping, or at least he'll have advice from people who do know ball. And we do need to continue to see this sort of adaptation, because it's really the bare minimum that you'd expect from a Premier League manager. And the fact that it hasn't occurred before now is a marker on him. And the fact that as soon as he did change to a more direct play, we get results. It's what us fools have been saying for 2 months now needs to happen. If that's a black mark on Farke, if anything, is because we're idiots. But yeah, he's got time. That's what I'm saying.
Right then, Martin, last one then, which is, as always, we like to finish on a nice high note, win, draw or lose. And I'm going to ask you for your man of the match, because it felt like we could pick 8 different players against Chelsea in midweek. I feel like it's maybe not that dissimilar on this occasion either, but for a different reason. It wasn't quite as good, obviously, the performance overall, but there were quite a few players that came on and performed well as subs, but there are also a few starters that seem to still play pretty well here. Not as many as the last game, so you're kind of judging more 6 and 7s out of 10s rather than 9s and 10s, but that's fine. Who ended up getting it for you?
I am giving it to the guy who Declan Rice modelled his playing style after, Anton Stach. He's mine. Yeah, Anton was great in this game. He was there with defensive workload. He was doing a lot more when it comes to creating shots than what I expected him to be doing. In this game, he had the most shot creating actions by quite a long margin. He had 9 shot creating actions. The closest to that was not Nyonto, who had 4. He had the joint most defensive numbers. Him and Jaden Bogle and Biol all had 3 tackles and interceptions each. He was just immense in this one and just involved in a lot of our attacks in the second half, and was just, and the goal capped it off nicely. So yeah, I've been looking forward to seeing him scoring another goal, and yeah, I really enjoyed his performance in this one. But there were a few others who were also really good in this. Big Dom Calvert-Lewin, my word, scoring goals against City, Chelsea and Liverpool all in the space of how many days? 7, 8 days, however you want to call it. Yeah, Calvert-Lewin was superb in this one as well. Took his penalty with plum. Was a nuisance for, even if Van Dijk did win more of the aerial duels, Van Dijk knew he was in a game from this one, and knew that he'd been there. So yeah, just want to give him a shout out. I'll let you go now.
Interesting with Calvert-Lewin, isn't it? Like, you don't know how you felt, and I know people in the ground won't have agreed, but I just knew he was going to score the pen. And he's missed his only other one for us, the one against Sheffield Wednesday in the cup. I just knew he was going to score.
He's got a good history. He's got a good history of scoring penalties.
It might just be the Everton Liverpool thing. I just thought, yeah, of course he's going to score against them. So that was great. Of the starters, I completely agree with you. It's Stach. He had the most the most expected goals and expected assists of any player other than Calvert-Lewin for us. Calvert-Lewin obviously had the penalty, so that's probably why there. If you take that off, I think Stach does win. I know he's on corners, but still. He also had the most defensive contributions for us with 9. I don't know what those exactly are, but FotMob say he's got 9, which is more than anyone else for us. So yeah, in that sense, definitely the most dominant player for us in the game who started. But if I had to give it, and again, it's a man of the match, it's not a man of the 30 minutes they were on the pitch, but if I had to give it to someone off their substitute appearance, it would be Tanaka for saving the game for us. I know Aronson was close as well. He would be my second choice after that. But I love watching how Tanaka play when he gets the ball and he starts doing his thing, like his little swivels and his turns that he does against even some absolutely monstrous midfielders. Gravenberch is one of the best midfielders in Europe over the last couple of years. Szoboszlai has been Liverpool's only good player this season consistently. Just amazes me what he can do sometimes with the ball, and then obviously the goal itself. So big shout out to him. But yeah, I think it is Stach, so we're in agreement. I think of the starters, he was the only one that was consistent in every third. I think there were a little bit, like, I thought Strauch had a pretty good game, but then the mistake for the second goal was a bit too much of a problem for me. Don't think the other defenders were amazing, but they were okay for the most part. In midfield, like Gruev had a steady game, but I wouldn't be getting excited about that. And Ampadu's kind of similar. I don't really want to give it to any of them. And Okafor struggled a bit, but like you said, the whole team kind of did in that first half. So yeah, Calvert-Lewin probably second, Stack probably first, and then the subs, they were all three of them were pretty good too, but just about I would lean to Stack, and I'm hoping that most of our listeners would too. But that's everything we have time for today. So don't forget to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Leave a review, give us 5 stars, give us 2 stars, and give us some criticism if you need to. If you want to give us some proper feedback, that's fine. I actually welcome that. Some of it's not been always fair at times over the years, but sometimes it's very fair, and I think there's people making good points to us, and I do welcome it. Even DM us on either Twitter or even our personal accounts. I'd be happy to hear from you all. But hopefully you did enjoy and you don't have any complaints. That would be nice. But that is everything for tonight. We'll be back previewing the game for Sunday, isn't it, against Brentford? We are the 4:30 kickoff on Sunday. We are the main Super Sunday game on Sky. Brentford against Leeds. Bloody hell. Wonderful. We're after immediately Sunderland and Newcastle as well, by the way. So, big game to follow. But anyway, all that's left for me to say, Martin, is thank you very much.
And thank you too, mate.
And thank you, listeners, for listening. We'll be back soon, as we say. And we hope you enjoy the start of your week and all of that. So we'll see you soon. Bye.